The breathtaking exposure of police secrets, undoing years of discretion by officers in Northern Ireland. Thousands of names, ranks, work locations of every serving police officer, including those working undercover, has been mistakenly published by the Police Service of Northern Ireland. At a time when officers and their families are still targeted by dissident groups, just months after the threat of domestic terrorism was raised here to severe. Liam is a serving officer and the chair of the Police Federation in Northern Ireland. He's been inundated with hundreds of messages from worried staff.
They're appalled that this has happened in the first place, that the checks and balances around this basically were inadequate. And there's a real palpable anger as well, because I mean we're an organisation that's built on people and trust, and the trust that the organisation has our back.
I mean, to put it bluntly, are police officers frightened?
They are, absolutely. I mean, particularly those who are in the more sensitive areas. You've some there who are left feeling very vulnerable today around this. I mean, we have people working with national security matters. I mean, it's important that that veil of secrecy is there to protect them from the very people that they are trying to protect our society from.
Among the names revealed, members of the organised crime units, intelligence officers, surveillance teams and almost 40 police staff based at MI5's Northern Ireland headquarters. Now, this matters for many reasons. Police officers here have told us there's still a serious amount of social stigma. If you join the police force and you live in a nationalist community, some officers keep their work a secret, even from their friends and families. The breach means thousands of officers could now potentially sue the force for compensation amounting to millions of pounds from an already overstretched budget.
It's simple human error. The people who have been involved in the process have acted in good faith. We've identified some steps that we can take to ensure that it doesn't happen again. It is regrettable.
The highly sensitive details were published online and removed hours later, following a Freedom of Information request. Politicians say there are now serious questions for the police.
If you're undercover, you may feel more at risk. If you have an unusual surname, you may feel more at risk. And indeed, if you're a Catholic or you come from the nationalist community, you may feel more at risk. And this is a real threat in 2023. I had one police officer contact me overnight. He hasn't had dinner in his mother's house for over 10 years because he can't tell her that he is a police officer.
While it's important to say the officers' personal addresses weren't published, the safety and security of police officers will make many here hyper-vigilant, with the latest figures showing attacks against police officers in Northern Ireland have almost doubled in the last 5 years. Recently, the new IRA claimed responsibility for the attempted assassination of Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell. The officer was shot multiple times in front of his son after he'd been coaching a youth football team in Omagh. The attack left him with life-changing injuries. The history of violence is well documented. More than 300 police officers were murdered in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. And these were the scenes just months ago in Derry on the anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. Some officers say they're still living in fear. As this afternoon, the police service announced they're investigating a second data breach, this time involving a stolen laptop. This is the Belfast Police Training College. It's empty at the moment because there's a recruitment freeze. There's no money to train new officers, but even if there was, we've been told this security breach will deter many from an already dangerous job.
Well, joining us now from Belfast is Stephen White, a former Assistant Chief Commissioner with the Northern Ireland Police. Do you think there will be officers who have to either leave their jobs or move away or go into protection as a result of this?
I don't think there'll be a knee-jerk reaction, but certainly some of those things will be in many officers' minds and the minds of their families. I can only repeat what the chairman of the Police Federation said, Liam, who has great credibility and has devoted a lifetime in policing to looking at the welfare and conditions of service for his colleagues. There is anger, there's almost unbelief, there is dismay, but there is also fear for personal security and the security of loved ones. So it's a very serious situation and it needs some very serious action, both in the immediate term and in later action.
I mean, although there have, of course, been attacks recently, a lot of our viewers just won't know what life was like before the Good Friday Agreement, when RUC officers were much more routinely targeted. Can you put this in some sort of historical context? You know, why does this trigger so much fear in police officers in Northern Ireland?
Yeah, and it's fear that is not hypothetical. It has always taken courage to be a police officer in Northern Ireland, and it always will. And if you look at the statistics of those who had to be evacuated and their houses bought under a special purchase scheme, and I am one of those, over 1,800 in the darker days of the Troubles had to move because they were being targeted either by terrorists or by those groups who wished to intimidate police and indeed take their lives. So this is bringing back a lot of what I suppose was the priority in the past and raising it to the agenda at the highest level again. What I've tried to explain today to some folks is that, rightly so, the culture of the police service constantly changes. It responds to the situation. And after the Good Friday Agreement and the reforms of policing in Northern Ireland, there was a hope that it would be more representative, that there would be positive recruitment of those minorities who were not in the ranks. But the culture changed from where security was paramount, absolutely paramount. Security of self, security of family, cars, properties, and information, to a situation where police were expected to become more open, transparent, and indeed more accountable, wearing name badges and so on. But that's the uniform branch. Obviously, as you've heard, there are national security issues. There is counter-terrorism going on. We're dealing with all sorts of extremists, not just local. So we do need officers who are in deep cover. But it's also more than that. Anonymity in policing in Northern Ireland is not a new thing. As you've heard, those who are from the Catholic or nationalist persuasion have sadly been targeted for intimidation historically. Yeah. So there's been such great efforts to get them into the ranks. What a shame that this may stymie that.
Stephen White, let's leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Well, before we came on air, I spoke to the Information Commissioner, John Edwards, and we discussed both the data breach at the Northern Ireland Police Service and also the one from the Electoral Register. First, though, I asked him what his office is now investigating at PSNI.
In this case, for example, while we know that a significant volume of personal data about serving officers has been uploaded and available to the public for a short period of time, we don't yet know whether that's been accessed by anyone, downloaded or stored before it was taken down. We certainly know that they acted promptly. It's also important for us, I think, to quickly get to the bottom of how this happens. And so we'll be checking the steps, we'll be checking their policies, we'll be checking the authorization of the individual. There are lessons to be learned from here, and there are accountabilities that need to be had as well.
Well, I mean, what kind of action can you take?
Well, we have a range of options, from issuing enforcement notices and orders to undertake certain actions, but it's a little bit early to start talking about penalties when we haven't actually established culpability. And it's really important that we allow PSNI to examine the situation themselves and that we extend to them the natural justice we expect.
I mean, what can people do to claim some sort of compensation for not just the disruption to their lives, but the legitimate fear that they and their families will be put through as a result of this?
That fear is very real. Whether we ultimately are able to determine whether there has been any exploitation of that data or whether it's fallen into the wrong hands, we mustn't understate the magnitude of that risk. But I'm not really in a position to talk about compensation. There are avenues for individuals to take to pursue remedies. They don't involve my office. My office is about understanding the causes and assigning accountabilities where appropriate.
Can we also turn to the data breach at the Electoral Commission, which seems absolutely vast in its scale and may have been carried out by a hostile foreign state? Could you just explain what you understand actually happened?
I don't have the technical details yet, but it seems that a vulnerability has been exploited and allowed access to systems, and that access has been quite protracted, and that there's been somebody inside the system for up to a year or more before the intrusion has been noticed. It's very difficult forensically to say with precision how that exploit has been taken advantage of, and with detail how data has been exfiltrated. But we'll be working with the Electoral Commission to understand that, and we expect to have answers that we can give out into the wider community so others can take steps to prevent that kind of thing.
In simple terms, does this mean that if you're on the Electoral Commission, your name and address have been revealed?
It may well. There is a significant number of compromised personal identity details, but I'm not entirely sure of the confidence we can have in the statistics we've seen yet. But I've seen a number of about 48 million, which does seem very substantial indeed.
John Edwards, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.